We're up to chapter 27. Annie, get your gun. Hello friends, welcome back to Storytime at Riverwood Cabin. My name's Rosie Boom and I'm the author of the Barn Chronicles series. And today I'm reading to you from Where Lions Roar at Night. We're up to chapter 27. Annie, get your gun. Angel lay on Millie's bed, snoring softly. Millie scratched the itchy spot on Angel's tummy and watched her good hind leg begin to twitch and scratch. Her leg was healing beautifully after the operation. The surgeon had attached the broken piece of bone and tendon back on with a tiny screw and plate. He'd been so friendly to them when they'd all trooped into his room with Angel. He had counted them twice and then asked if they were all from the one family. When they assured him they were, he smiled and said he could tell Angel was a much-loved dog. And then he had told Mum he would do the operation for the same price as an amputation. "I'm so glad you've decided to get her leg operated on," he had said. "I would hate to cut her little leg off when I know I can fix it." Millie smiled to herself. He had been so kind and so gentle with Angel, and watching him, she had decided she would love to help injured animals like that when she grew up. Every day since the operation, she or Ellie had helped Mum take off Angel's bandages and put on the antibiotic powder and then resplint the leg. At first, the wound was red and swollen, and Angel tried to chew it constantly. But now it looked the right colour, and Angel took very little notice of it. She was even putting her leg on the ground sometimes, although most of the time she happily skipped along on 3 legs. Millie and Jake and Sam tried to stop her following them when they went down to the river to play, but she waited until they weren't looking and then hopped after them. Angel stirred and rubbed her face with one of her paws. Then she gave a deep sigh and started snoring again. Millie slipped out of bed and crept downstairs. Today was a special day. Today, Auntie Penny was lending them her horse float, and they were going to take Peony up to the Foot Farm. But not just Peony. Millie's tummy flipped with excitement when she thought about it. They were taking Pharaoh as well. Gwen had told Mum she could ride him whenever she wanted to, and that she could take him up to Auntie Penny's. Millie smiled as she remembered how Mum's eyes had shone with excitement when she had told the family about it. She tiptoed into Mum and Dad's bedroom and saw that Mum was already awake. She slipped into the bed beside her. "Exciting, isn't it?" whispered Mum. Millie nodded. She just wished the day would hurry up and get started properly. It seemed like forever before Millie saw the float coming slowly towards them down the drive. Pharaoh was galloping beside it along the fence line, his head and tail high. Peony knew that something was up too. She trotted up to the gate and watched the goings-on with bright eyes. Mum took a halter and went to catch Pharaoh. Millie watched as she led him back up the drive. He pranced and danced beside her, his neck arched proudly and his nostrils flaring. He looked like a racehorse that had just won $1 million race. Millie could hear him nickering to Peony again and again as he danced beside Mum. Mum was grinning from ear to ear. "He's so excited," she called. "I'd say he's got a good idea what a float is. I'll bet he's been to a fair few shows in his day." She patted his neck. "Boy, you sure prance a lot." "What about Sir Lancelot?" asked Sam as he walked past them. He loved anything to do with knights. Mum looked at him for a second and then let out a laugh. No, not Lancelot, Sam. I was saying that Pharaoh prances a lot. Oh, said Sam with a self-conscious look. But you've just given me a great idea for a name for him, said Mum. His nickname can be Sir Prancelot. Come on, Sir Prancelot, let's see how well you get on the float. Milly watched as he followed Mum straight onto the float without any fuss. Once Mum had tied him up, Milly led Peony on. She stood quietly beside Pharaoh while he nuzzled and nudged her, nickering softly. He's in love, laughed Milly. Besotted. When Seth and Eva saw the two horses back out of the float, they charged around the paddock, neighing and bucking. We'll keep them separate for a day or two, said Auntie Penny. Give them a chance to settle down and get to know each other over the fence. When they let the horses go into the paddock, Milly watched Pharaoh and Peony gallop up and down the fence line. Every now and then they stopped and sniffed noses with Eva and Seth, and Peony squealed and stamped her foot. I can't wait to go for a ride all together, she told Auntie Penny. Mum looked at Pharaoh snorting and tossing his head. I must say I'll be a wee bit nervous. I love a spirited horse, but until you get to know them and trust them, it's a bit nerve-wracking. You'll be fine, said Milly. Mum laughed. Well, I'm glad you're so confident. It's been 30 years since I've really ridden. Ah, but you never forget, said Auntie Penny. That night at dinner, Milly told the others all about it. I can't wait to put on one of Auntie Penny's western saddles on Peony and go up the hill. I want to ride too, don't forget, said Ellie. Milly glared at her, but Mum flashed a look at Milly and said, Of course you can, Ellie. You'll just both have to take turns. That made Milly feel grumpy. She didn't want to have to share. She wanted Peony to be all hers. Anyway, some of the time you can ride Seth, continued Mum. Auntie Penny can't ride much yet, and she thinks he'll be fine for you. Ellie's eyes lit up. She'd ridden Seth before, and he felt like a big rocking horse. You can't hide from me! Jake's loud voice made Milly jump. Everyone stopped what they were doing and stared at him. He was studying his plate. With a quick movement, he flipped his potato and fished out one bright green pea. He stared at it for a moment and then popped it in his mouth. Milly spluttered with laughter. Jake, you used to hide your peas there not so long ago. What happened? Jake grinned and announced in a proud voice, I like peas now. Dad laughed. Well, well. So, no more counting your peas each night and complaining that you have 36 and Sam only has 34? Jacob nodded and wriggled his body and wriggled his eyebrows in a showing-off sort of way. Everyone laughed. The next day was Saturday, and Milly could hardly wait to go riding. But when she asked Mum what time they'd be going, Mum answered, We may not get to go today, Milly. We're having visitors. Milly groaned. That's not fair. What about our ride? It'll keep. Anyway, it's Joseph and Zach and Dan coming. That'll be fun. Milly enjoyed her older cousins. Whenever they came down, they had a lot of fun playing fierce volleyball. But she still desperately wanted to go riding. Don't spoil the day by being grumpy, warned Mum. You can choose to enjoy it, or you can make things miserable for yourself and everybody else." Easy enough for Mum to say, thought Milly as she went outside. Then she remembered how excited Mum had been about Pharaoh and realised she would have been looking forward to the ride too. When he arrived, Joseph pulled out his air rifle from the boot of the car. "I thought we could have a shooting competition," he told Dad and Josiah. Milly felt a flutter of excitement. She loved it when Dad gave her a turn at target shooting. Soon they had hung an old tin can from one of the trees growing in the gully around Black Rabbit Island. Joseph sorted everyone into 2 lines and then gave Dad a safety speech. "No one must go in front of the guns at any time. Wait your turn behind the line. Joseph and I will load the guns after each turn." For the next half an hour, the air was filled with the crack of guns and the ping of the tin. Everyone had a number of turns, and everyone, including Mum, had hit the tin. Then Joseph announced a new game for the adults and older children. "We'll take turns shooting at the tin, and if you miss it, you're out. But you've only got 5 seconds to shoot. Any longer than that, and you're out." 5 seconds? Exclaimed Mum. "The tin will still be swinging from the previous hit." Joseph grinned. "Exactly. I'll load the gun and hand it to each person. The time starts the second you have the gun." "Okay, kids," said Dad, "stand right back and watch and learn." He winked and took up the gun. 5, 4, 3, 2, bang went the gun, and the tin swung wildly on its string. Dad grinned proudly at the audience and handed the gun back to Joseph. He reloaded and handed the gun to Mum. 5, 4, 3, bang! The tin danced frantically in the air. "Go, Mum!" shouted the children. Dad stared at her in shock. Zach was next. He calmly took the gun, aimed and shot. The tin continued its crazy jig. By this time, the kids were counting loudly. Daniel looked down the barrel and fired. The tin swung wildly around. 3, 2, 1. "Sorry, Kate, too slow," said Joseph. One by one they dropped out. Dad looked a bit worried as he put the gun on his shoulder and tried to find the swinging tin in his sights. "Just in time," laughed Joseph after Dad had taken a shot. Mum grabbed the gun and shot before the kids could count down to 3. "Unbelievable," muttered Dad as everyone cheered. Mum grinned at him. "Want a game of chess afterwards?" she asked cheekily. Milly giggled. Dad hated it when Mum beat him at anything. The tin was dancing and spinning wildly when Dad took the gun for his next turn. Milly watched him struggle to find it in his sights. He squeezed the trigger just in time. "Out!" shouted Jake and Sam. Sure enough, the tin was slowing its crazy dance. Dad had missed. "Makes an easy shot for me," said Mum in a perky voice as she took the gun from Joseph. Dad grimaced at her. Zing! The tin spun and twirled again. "What a fluke," muttered Dad. She handed the gun back to Joseph and took a bow. "Just call me Annie Oakley," she said with a twinkle in her eye. Then she turned and looked at Dad. "Chess, darling?"